Welcome to Cozy Tales Collective, your snug little corner for settling in with a comforting sleep story. Tonight is a guided sleep story, a tranquil journey through the peaceful woods with your devoted pet dog, Scout. Before we dive into this peaceful story, if you love relaxing with bedtime tales and gentle affirmations, please consider subscribing to our channel. And if you'd like to support us further, a quick click on the like button would mean the world. Thank you so much for your kindness and support. Have a wonderful night and enjoy tonight's guided story. The first thing I noticed was the bird song. Not the sharp, demanding cries of the city crows, but the light, whimsical chatter of little birds I couldn't yet name. I kept my eyes closed for a moment, letting their music weave into my dreams. The scent of early morning dew crept in through the open window, and a soft, golden light danced on the backs of my eyelids. When I finally blinked awake, the world was painted in that honeyed hue that only comes just after dawn. Golden beams of sunlight slanted through the tall trees outside my window, creating moving mosaics on my wooden floor. I stretched slowly, the familiar creak of my joints mingling with the morning chorus. For a moment, everything felt perfectly still, suspended in a quiet that wasn't silence, but something deeper. A warm pressure leaned against my side, and I turned my head to see Scout, my golden retriever, snoozing contentedly beside me. His chest rose and fell in a slow, steady rhythm, and his fur seemed almost to glow in the morning light. As if sensing my gaze, his tail gave a lazy thump against the bedspread before he cracked open one eye, regarding me with sleepy affection. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, ruffling his ears. He yawned hugely in response, then shifted into a sitting position, tongue lolling out in an expectant grin. Today was the day. I had promised him an adventure, and if the excitement starting to shimmer in the air between us was any indication, he hadn't forgotten. Sliding out of bed, I padded over to the closet, pulling out my old, battered backpack. It was a deep forest green, worn in all the right places, the canvas soft from years of use. Today wasn't going to be about long miles or steep trails. It was about comfort, exploration, and small, wonderful moments. I packed carefully, wanting to savor the act as much as the journey itself. First, a soft plaid blanket, folded just so, tucked neatly at the bottom. Then a thermos of coffee still steaming and another of cool water. I added a tin of buttery shortbread cookies and a bag of fresh trail mix, the kind with extra chocolate pieces, because why not? For Scout, I packed his favorite liver treats, a collapsible water bowl, and his sturdy red leash, though I doubted he'd need it where we were going. At the last minute, I threw in a well-worn paperback, the pages dog-eared from countless readings, just in case we found the perfect spot to sit and while away some time. Scout watched every move I made with mounting excitement, his tail sweeping the floor in eager arcs. When I finally zipped the pack shut and slung it over one shoulder, he let out a soft woof, bounding towards the door. All right, I laughed, grabbing my jacket off the hook. Adventure time. Outside, the world was still fresh and dewy, the grass cool beneath my boots. The air smelled of damp earth, pine, and distant flowers. Scout bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tail a high waving flag. I followed, the morning light turning the ordinary path through the woods into something almost magical. We didn't have a strict destination. That was the beauty of mornings like this. The freedom to let the world unfold around us, to follow the tug of curiosity wherever it led. The birds' songs wove together above us, a chorus that ebbed and flowed with our steps. Every few yards, Scout would pause, his whole body vibrating with excitement at some invisible scent. I let him lead, smiling at his joy. It wasn't about getting somewhere fast. It was about being here, together. About a mile into the woods, we found a clearing I had never noticed before. The sunlight poured into it in fat golden beams, and wildflowers bobbed their colorful heads in a gentle breeze. It was perfect. I spread the blanket beneath an ancient oak, whose sprawling limbs offered a dappled shade just perfect for lazing away the hours. Scout flopped down immediately, rolling onto his back with a grunt of pure happiness. I unpacked slowly, savoring each small pleasure, the rich scent of coffee as I poured it into my enamel mug, the crisp snap of a cookie breaking in half, the way Scout's ears perked up at the crinkle of his treat bag. I tossed him a treat, which he caught mid-air with practiced ease. After a while, I leaned back on my elbows, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. Scout rested his head on my lap, his eyes half closed, content to simply exist in this soft bubble of morning. I opened my book but found myself reading the same line over and over, my attention drifting. There was too much beauty to capture in words. The way the light shifted as the sun climbed higher, the soft sigh of the wind through the trees, the steady warmth of Scout's fur beneath my hand. Time seemed to stretch and bend, as if the universe itself was giving us permission to just be. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about the emails waiting back home. I just breathed and listened and smiled. Eventually, Scout roused himself, nudging me with his wet nose, asking without asking, "What's next?" I laughed, standing and stretching. "More adventure?" I asked, though we both knew the answer. He barked once, sharp and bright, and took off down a narrow, winding trail I hadn't noticed before. Heartlight, I followed, backpack bouncing against my shoulders, ready for whatever small magic the morning still had to offer. The morning air bit at my cheeks as I tightened the strap of my backpack, feeling the weight settle more comfortably against my spine. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, drawing a deep breath that filled my lungs with the crisp, pine-scented air. There was a freshness to it, a kind of clean that only the early hours could deliver, untouched yet by the heat of the day or the stirrings of too many people. My boots met the trail with a satisfying crunch, the soft dirt and scattered pebbles shifting underfoot. Each step sounded louder in the quiet of dawn, the noise almost musical, blending with the gentle whisper of leaves overhead. I smiled to myself, feeling a small thrill of excitement as I finally set off, the world narrowing to the winding path ahead, and the sky slowly blushing from indigo to a soft, hopeful pink. Just ahead, my dog Scout trotted along with his usual uncontainable joy. His golden fur caught the new light, making him look almost ethereal, like some wild creature born of the forest itself. Every few steps he would glance back at me, his tongue lolling out in a grin so wide and infectious that I couldn't help but laugh. His tail wagged like a metronome, steady and sure, keeping time with the rhythm of our journey. The trail led us deeper into the woods, and with each step, the world seemed to come alive. Tiny wildflowers dotted the sides of the path, shy bursts of color in the green undergrowth. I spotted bright yellow buttercups, delicate purple asters, and tiny white starflowers, their faces turned up to greet the morning sun. I paused for a moment, crouching down to run my fingers lightly over a cluster of bluebells, their petals trembling as if they, too, were shivering in the chill. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the soft, cheerful gurgle of a creek. The sound was like a beckoning, a playful song that danced on the cool breeze. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, letting the melody wash over me, feeling it pull at something deep within. It reminded me of childhood summers spent splashing through cold water, of bare feet and laughter and the simple magic of being alive. Scout barked once, a sharp, happy sound, and I opened my eyes to see him standing a few yards ahead, tail wagging furiously as if urging me to hurry. I chuckled and picked up my pace, the trail welcoming and soft beneath my boots. As we moved, the canopy above began to thin, and golden shafts of light pierced through, scattering diamonds of brightness on the ground. The world smelled of damp earth and blooming things, of moss and bark and the faint musk of unseen animals going about their morning rituals. I felt a profound sense of connection, a thread weaving me into the fabric of this place. Scout veered off the path briefly to investigate a particularly interesting bush, his nose working overtime. I let him explore, knowing that part of the joy of the trail was in the discoveries we made along the way. For him, every scent was a story, every rustle in the underbrush a mystery to be solved. I took another deep breath, feeling the crispness cut through the lingering haze of sleep. The coolness kissed the inside of my nose, and I exhaled slowly, watching my breath puff out like a small cloud before dissipating into the morning. There was something grounding about the simple act of breathing out here, a reminder that life didn't have to be so complicated. The trail began to climb gently, winding up a slope that offered tantalizing glimpses of the valley beyond. I could see patches of fog still clinging to the low ground, ethereal and otherworldly, as if the earth itself were exhaling in slow, dreamy sighs. Scout darted up the incline with the ease of youth, while I took it a bit slower, savoring the way my muscles warmed with effort, the way my heart beat a little harder in my chest. Every few minutes I would catch sight of another wildflower, another flash of color amid the greens and browns. It was like the trail itself was celebrating the arrival of spring, throwing a quiet, beautiful party that only the observant could attend. I found myself smiling constantly, a lightness blooming in my chest that had nothing to do with the thin air and everything to do with being exactly where I was supposed to be. The bubbling sound of the creek grew louder as we crested the hill, and soon the trail dipped down to meet it. The water tumbled over rocks and fallen branches, clear and cold and laughing at its own journey. Scout plunged into the shallows with a joyful splash, barking and snapping at the sparkling droplets. I laughed again, setting my pack down on a dry rock and kneeling to scoop up a handful of the icy water. It bit at my skin, making me gasp and grin all at once. I splashed my face, feeling the cold chase away the last vestiges of sleep, leaving me wide-eyed and exhilarated. Scout, soaked and delighted, bounded up to me and shook himself vigorously, sending a shower of droplets my way. I shrieked and ducked, but it was a half-hearted effort. His happiness was contagious, and I didn't really mind the sudden dampness. I sat there for a while, letting the creek's song fill my ears, the sun creeping higher and setting the world alight. Birds flitted through the trees, their calls weaving into the music of the morning. Somewhere a woodpecker tapped out a rhythm, and the wind added its own soft counterpoint, rustling the leaves in a secret language I would never quite understand, but loved all the same. Eventually, Scout grew restless, nose to the ground, eager to see what lay beyond the next bend. I stood and stretched, feeling the satisfying pull of muscles waking up fully to the day. We set off again, following the trail as it curved away from the creek and back into the sheltering arms of the forest. The morning unfolded slowly, luxuriously, like a cat stretching in a patch of sunlight. Every sense was alive, attuned to the smallest details. The scent of damp moss, the intricate patterns of lichen on a fallen log, the sudden flash of a deer disappearing into the trees. Scout stayed close but adventurous, his happiness a living thing, a spark that kept me moving forward with eager steps. As the hours slipped by, the trail led us through meadows bathed in light, across narrow wooden bridges that creaked pleasantly underfoot, and beneath towering pines that seemed to scrape the sky. Each new vista, each unexpected bloom or distant call of a hawk felt like a gift, a quiet reminder that the world, for all its chaos, still held spaces of pure, unspoiled beauty. By the time we circled back toward the trailhead, the sun was well above the treetops, warming the air and softening the crispness of the morning. My legs were pleasantly sore, my face flushed from exertion and the lingering chill. Finn trotted beside me, tongue lolling, his fur dusted with bits of leaves and twigs from his adventures. As we stepped off the trail and back into the parking lot, I turned for one last look. The trees stood tall and silent, the trail winding away like a whispered invitation. I promised myself I'd come back soon, to listen again to the creek's song, to breathe in the wild, to follow the crunching path into the quiet wonder of the woods. And beside me, Scout bumped his head against my leg, his way of agreeing. we would definitely be back. The trail narrowed as we moved deeper into the woods, swallowed by the towering forms of ancient trees that stood like sentinels guarding a secret world. Their trunks rose thick and straight, bark gnarled and cracked with age, whispering stories of centuries past. My boots moved with careful steps, the ground beneath them a soft carpet of moss and fallen leaves, muffling each footfall into near silence. Above, shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy in golden beams, spotlighting patches of earth and creating a kaleidoscope of light and shadow that danced and shimmered with the movement of the breeze. It was as if the forest itself breathed around me, a slow, timeless rhythm that I unconsciously synced my own steps to. Scout trotted ahead, tail high and wagging, his nose twitching at every new scent. Every so often he would glance back at me, his tongue lolling out in a grin that pulled a chuckle from deep within my chest. His joy was contagious. Even the weight of my pack seemed lighter, the minor aches in my legs dulled by the simple, profound beauty of our surroundings. The deeper we went, the quieter it became, the noise of the outside world falling away in layers. Only the soft crunch of my boots, the occasional snap of a twig under Scout's paw, and the sigh of the wind through the trees filled the space. It wasn't an oppressive silence. It was welcoming, sacred. I paused often, sometimes with a hand resting against the rough bark of a tree, feeling the steady presence of life humming just beneath the surface. Closing my eyes, I let the sounds wash over me. The distant rustle of unseen animals, the creaking groan of an old tree swaying, and somewhere far above, the clear, wild cry of an eagle soaring high beyond the canopy. The sound sent a thrill through me, primal and free. I craned my neck, searching the patches of blue sky framed by green, but the eagle remained elusive, hidden by the towering arms of the forest. Still, just hearing it was enough. It was a reminder that even here in this pocket of stillness, the wild ruled supreme. The trail twisted and turned, weaving between trees so large it would take 3 of me, arms outstretched, to encircle them. Their roots jutted up from the earth in tangled mazes, forcing me to step carefully. Ferns brushed against my calves and the air grew cooler, thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying wood, and the sweet green of growing things. At a wide clearing bathed in golden light, I spotted a fallen log resting comfortably in a patch of soft moss. It was the perfect place to pause. Scout seemed to agree. Without waiting for a command, he bounded over and plopped down beside it, his sides heaving gently with contented breaths. I shrugged off my pack and lowered myself onto the log with a grateful sigh. The coolness of the wood seeped through the seat of my pants, grounding me. I pulled out my water bottle, feeling the slick condensation against my fingers, and took a long, refreshing drink. The water was cool and crisp, carrying a faint metallic tang that somehow tasted purer out here. Scout inched closer and rested his broad, warm head on my lap, his eyes closing in slow, blissful contentment. I smiled down at him, running a hand along his silky ears. His tail thumped lazily against the moss before settling into stillness. For a long while we just sat there. No hurry, no destination pressing on us. Just the rhythm of our breathing, the occasional sigh of the wind weaving between the trees and the far-off echoes of the wild. I leaned back a little, lifting my face to the sunlight filtering down, feeling it warm my skin and close the chill that lingered in the depths of the forest. I listened, not just with my ears, but with my whole being. The forest spoke in languages older than words, the shifting patterns of light, the whisper of leaves brushing against one another, the heartbeat thud of a woodpecker somewhere in the distance. Each sound layered gently on top of the next, creating a melody that soothed every ragged edge inside me. Scout snored softly, his breath warm against my thigh. I ran my fingers through the soft fur behind his ears, grateful for his presence, for the bond we shared that needed no words. It felt like we were a part of the forest now, no longer visitors but accepted guests. I thought about how many people would never see this place, would never know the hush of the heart of the forest, and a bittersweet feeling welled up inside me. Part of me wished I could share it, show them the way the sunlight danced across the ferns, the way the wind sang through the trees. But another part of me, the deeper, quieter part, was glad it remained a hidden world for those willing to seek it out. Time passed in that fluid, untethered way it does when you stop measuring it. When the shadows began to shift and stretch, and the cooling air whispered that afternoon was leaning toward evening, I finally stirred. Scout opened one eye, then the other, giving me a lazy grin. I laughed and leaned down to press a kiss between his eyes. Come on, buddy. Let's see what else this trail has to show us. He stretched extravagantly, paws reaching forward, tail high in the air, before bounding to his feet with renewed energy. I packed away the water bottle, hoisted my backpack once more, and with a final pat on the ancient log, we continued down the trail. The heart of the forest seemed to pulse around us now, alive and aware. I felt as if we had been entrusted with a secret, one that would live inside my chest forever, a steady, grounding thrum. The trail led us deeper still, past pools of still water that mirrored the sky and giant ferns that brushed my shoulders as I passed. The trees here were even older, their branches so thick with moss and lichen they seemed almost to have become part of the earth itself. We moved quietly, almost reverently. Scout's ears twitched at every sound, his nose busy cataloging scents, while I kept my eyes wide open, drinking in every detail. A pair of tiny birds flitted across the trail, chasing one another in a madcap game. A squirrel chattered indignantly from a low branch before vanishing up the trunk of a tree. Again I heard the eagle's call, closer this time, sharper against the cool hush. I stopped, scanning the sky, and this time I saw it. A dark silhouette circling against the blue, wings wide and sure. It moved with effortless grace, a master of its realm. I watched it until it disappeared beyond the trees, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Scout pressed against my leg as if sensing the awe in me, and together we stood there for a few more moments, letting the forest speak to us in its ancient tongue. Eventually, the trail began to loop back, winding slowly toward where we had begun. The light grew slant and golden, and the forest shifted again, the hush deepening into a soft murmur of evening. We walked in easy silence, the bond between us as strong and quiet as the roots under our feet. When the trailhead finally came into view, a small part of me felt a pang of sadness. I wasn't ready to leave the heart of the forest, this hidden world that had cradled us so gently. But I knew we would return. As long as there were trails to follow and mornings to chase, Finn and I would find our way back here, to the place where the sunlight danced and the ancient trees whispered their secrets to those willing to listen. Scout looked up at me one last time before we crossed the threshold out of the woods, his eyes bright and knowing. I smiled down at him, scratching behind his ears. "We'll come back," I promised. And I meant it. We stepped forward together, the trail behind us still humming with life, the memory of the heart of the forest tucked safely into my own. The woods had been my home for the past 3 days. Every step up the meandering trail was a reminder of the life I had left behind for just a little while. The screens, the endless pings of incoming messages, the heavy sighs of a busy life. Here, there were only the sounds of twigs cracking underfoot, the chorus of unseen birds, and the steady pant of my companion Rufus, trotting loyally by my side. We had started at dawn, the forest still cradled in mist. The air was rich with the smell of damp earth and pine, and every breath filled my lungs with something wild and pure. Rufus, a scruffy golden retriever with an eternal puppy's heart, darted ahead, nose twitching, tail wagging like a metronome keeping pace with my heartbeat. The path grew steeper, the trees thinner. Through breaks in the dense canopy, hints of the sky beckoned us upward. My legs ached, but there was a lightness in me too, a pull toward something I couldn't quite name. Scout slowed as we climbed, sensing, perhaps, that the moment we'd been chasing was near. When we finally broke free from the woods, it was as if the world itself had unfolded before us. The cliffside was a wide, open ledge of rough stone, dotted with tufts of grass and wildflowers clinging to life against the wind. Beyond it, mountains rolled into forever, their peaks softened by distance and time. Blue and green and purple hues bled into one another like watercolor, and the sky stretched endlessly above, a rich, saturated blue. I stopped dead in my tracks, overwhelmed. The soft breeze rushed toward me, playful and cool, lifting the sweat-matted hair from my forehead. It kissed my skin with the gentleness of an old friend, and I closed my eyes, letting it wrap around me. Rufus sat beside me, his tongue lolling out in a lazy smile, his gaze locked on the horizon as if he too understood the gravity of this place. Without a word, I sank down onto a flat rock, the warmth of it seeping through the fabric of my pants. Scout immediately padded closer and sat against my leg, a comforting weight. For a long while we said nothing. There was no need. I reached into my pack and pulled out a battered bag of trail mix and a slightly squashed peanut butter sandwich. Scout perked up immediately, his nose twitching with anticipation. Laughing quietly, I tore off a piece of the sandwich and offered it to him. He took it delicately from my fingers, his eyes sparkling with gratitude and mischief. We ate slowly, sharing bites and listening to the symphony of nature around us. The breeze rustled through the grasses and sent the distant trees whispering. Somewhere far below, a river sang a soft, steady song. Occasionally, a hawk's cry pierced the sky, sharp and clear, but otherwise the world seemed to hold its breath. Contentment settled over me like a warm blanket. I thought of all the reasons I'd set out on this journey, the restless nights, the hollow conversations, the feeling that somewhere along the way I had lost the thread of my own story. Here, on this sun-kissed ledge with Rufus by my side, the thread returned to me, bright and strong. There was a profound stillness to the moment, but also a vibrant hum of life. It was in the gentle nudge of Scout's nose against my arm, asking for more sandwich. It was in the way the light danced across the tops of the mountains. It was in the thrum of my own heart, steady and sure. "This is it, boy," I murmured, scratching behind Scout's ears. "This is what we were looking for." He answered with a soft woof, as if he agreed. Time became fluid. Minutes, hours, it didn't matter. We simply sat there, soaking in the universe. After a while, I lay back against the warm rock, feeling its solidness anchor me to the earth. Scout curled up next to me, his body pressed close. I watched a few lazy clouds drift across the sky, their forms shifting and tumbling into fantastical shapes. For the first time in what felt like years, I let my mind wander without trying to corral it into productivity or purpose. I thought of the people I loved. I thought of the dreams I had tucked away because life had seemed too loud, too urgent to make space for them. I thought of the person I had been before everything got so complicated. Here, in this wide, wild place, none of it seemed out of reach. I reached over and ran my hand through Scout's soft fur. He let out a deep, contented sigh, the kind that made his whole body shudder. My heart swelled with a quiet kind of love. For him, for this place, for myself. Eventually, the sun began its slow descent toward the mountains, painting the world in gold and rose. The breeze cooled further, carrying the scent of wildflowers and the faint, rich aroma of the woods behind us. Scout stirred, lifting his head to watch the shifting light with solemn eyes. "Time to head back soon," I said softly. He wagged his tail once, acknowledging me but showing no urgency. Neither of us wanted to leave, and I promised myself we would carry this place within us. Whenever the world felt too loud again, whenever I started to forget who I was, I would close my eyes and remember this moment. The taste of peanut butter, the feel of Scout's fur beneath my hand, the endless stretch of mountains kissing the sky. I packed up our things slowly, deliberately, not ready to break the spell. Scout stood and stretched, shaking out his coat, and then sat patiently as I slung the pack over my shoulder. "Come on, buddy," I said, giving him a fond scratch. "Let's find our way home." He trotted ahead, leading us back toward the path, his spirit light and unburdened. I followed, my heart lighter than it had been in years. And though we left the mountain view behind us, the peace of it stayed tucked inside, a small, steady fire to warm us on the road ahead. The trail narrowed the deeper I walked into the forest, the soft crunch of my boots against the earth the only sound, aside from the occasional trill of a bird or the distant rustle of leaves. Scout trotted ahead of me, her tail wagging in lazy arcs. His nose was to the ground, sniffing enthusiastically at every scent she could find. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees in thick golden beams, casting long, dreamy shadows across the path. I adjusted the pack on my shoulders and took a deep breath, savoring the crisp scent of pine and earth. It was the smell of freedom, of escape. I had been dreaming of this trip for months, and now, finally, it was real. Just me, Scout, and the endless wilderness. After another mile or so, the trail bent sharply to the left and revealed the most perfect sight. A hidden meadow tucked between tall pines, a secret pocket of peace away from the world. It opened up like a secret whisper, the grass soft and wild, dappled with tiny purple and yellow flowers. A small creek bubbled nearby, its water catching the sunlight in sparkling flashes. I could see a fallen log near the center of the clearing, perfect for sitting, and plenty of flat ground for the tent. "Well, boy," I said, patting Scout's head, "this looks like home for the night." She barked once in agreement, then raced across the meadow, his ears flopping joyfully. Laughing, I shrugged off my pack and got to work. The first thing was the tent. It was a small, two-person setup I'd used a dozen times before, easy to assemble even with the fatigue beginning to seep into my muscles. I found a flat spot, clearing a few twigs and rocks before spreading out the tarp. The tent sprang to life as I fed the poles through the sleeves, snapping them into place. I anchored the corners down with stakes, pressing them firmly into the earth. Once the tent was up, I unrolled my sleeping bag inside, smoothing it out until it looked inviting and warm. I even brought a tiny foam dog bed for Scout. A small luxury, but he deserved it. I laid it next to me inside the tent, and when Scout saw it, she immediately curled up on it with a contented sigh, his eyes closing halfway in bliss. "You have the right idea," I said, ruffling his fur. Stepping back outside, I took a moment to really look around. The meadow was beginning to change under the touch of evening. The sun was dipping lower, turning the sky into a masterpiece of warm hues. The clouds, wispy and thin, caught the colors and scattered them like a painting come to life. Shades of orange bled into pink, melting into soft lavender. The tops of the pines glowed in the fiery light, and the entire clearing felt wrapped in magic. I gathered a small pile of dry wood for a campfire, setting it carefully in a ring of stones someone had left behind, a sign that others had found this special place too. I struck a match, the tiny flame catching quickly. The fire crackled to life, sending a comforting glow against the growing shadows. Scout stirred and came to sit beside me, his head resting against my leg as we both watched the sun disappear. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, savoring the chill that came with the twilight, and tossed a stick for Scout, who chased it with a happy yip. Dinner was simple. A can of chili heated over the fire, eaten straight from the pot with a spoon. Scout got her usual kibble, though I slipped him a few bites of meat when he looked at me with those pleading eyes. As we ate, the meadow shifted into full night. Stars began to prick the sky, faint at first, then stronger, like someone was sewing diamonds into velvet. I leaned back against the fallen log, feeling completely at peace. The fire popped and hissed. Aspen stretched out beside me, belly up, his legs twitching now and then in some dream of chasing rabbits. "This is what it's all about," I whispered, not wanting to disturb the stillness. The world beyond the trees, the noise, the obligations, the endless rush, seemed so far away it was almost like a dream. Here, there was only the cool air on my skin, the soft sigh of the breeze in the pines, the steady warmth of my dog by my side. After a while, the fire burned low, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. I stood, stretching my arms above my head, and yawned. "Time for bed, boy," I said. Scout padded into the tent ahead of me. I zipped us inside, the familiar sound oddly comforting, and tucked us into our respective beds. Aspen curled up into a tight ball, snoring almost immediately. I lay on my back, staring up at the faint pattern of stars visible through the thin tent fabric. I let my thoughts drift, anchored only by the steady rhythm of Scout's breathing. Tomorrow we would hike deeper into the wilderness, maybe find a lake to swim in, or a hilltop to watch another sunset from. But for now, here in this hidden meadow, I had everything I needed. Sleep came easily, wrapped in the scent of pine, the cool touch of night air, and the deep, enduring feeling of having found, even if just for a little while, the perfect place to call home. The last glow of the campfire painted a faint flickering light across the walls of the tent as I settled into my sleeping bag. Aspen had already found her spot, curled tightly into a little ball on her bed, his nose tucked under his tail, only the occasional twitch of his ears or a soft snore breaking the stillness. I smiled at him, feeling that deep, almost aching tenderness that only comes in quiet, perfect moments like this. The cool night air slipped into the tent through the mesh windows, crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and earth and something a little sweeter, maybe the last of the wildflowers clinging to summer. I pulled the sleeping bag tighter around me, letting the familiar sounds of the night seep into my bones. The soft crackle of the tiny campfire outside popped rhythmically, a gentle percussion against the silence. Above us, the stars had come out in full splendor. Through the open flap of the tent, I could see them sprinkled across the black sky, so vivid and sharp they almost looked close enough to touch. They shimmered like distant lanterns, each one holding a story or a wish, timeless and steady. I shifted onto my side, facing Scout, and reached out to gently scratch behind his ears. She sighed in his sleep, pressing closer, his body warm against mine. The simple, grounding presence of her filled me with a profound sense of gratitude. In the world beyond these trees, things were complicated, loud, uncertain. But here, now, it was just easy, simple, right. I let my eyes drift closed, breathing in slow, savoring the sensation of complete safety. No cars, no buzzing phones, no obligations tapping at my shoulder. Just the fire's soft voice, the cold air against my cheeks, and Aspen's rhythmic breathing keeping me tethered to this quiet world. The heaviness of sleep began to pull at me, slow and sweet, like slipping into a warm pool. My limbs loosened, sinking deeper into the sleeping bag. My mind wandered lazily, dreamily, thinking about the trail we had followed today, the hidden meadow we'd discovered, the laughter I'd felt watching Scout bound through the grass without a care in the world. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out, its haunting voice a low, soothing echo across the trees. I smiled into the darkness. Everything felt so alive out here and yet so gentle, like the forest itself was cradling us. I shifted slightly, burrowing deeper into my cocoon of warmth. The sleeping bag was soft against my skin, the ground beneath me firm but not uncomfortable. It amazed me how quickly my body adapted to this, to trading a mattress for the earth, a ceiling for the open sky. It felt more natural somehow, as if I were remembering something ancient and true. Scout stirred again, scooting closer so that her side pressed against my ribs. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, a tiny drum keeping rhythm with my own slowing pulse. I slipped an arm over his, careful not to wake him, and let my hand rest lightly on his soft fur. "Good girl," I whispered into the darkness. He wagged her tail once in her sleep, a soft thump against the nylon floor. The fire outside sputtered a little, then settled into a steady hum of embers. The smell of wood smoke wafted into the tent, mingling with the fresh night air. It wrapped around me like a familiar, comforting blanket. I opened my eyes briefly, looking out through the small crack in the tent door. The stars had shifted slightly, tracing slow arcs across the sky. I found the Big Dipper easily, then the North Star, holding its place like a steadfast guardian. Somewhere near the horizon, a shooting star zipped by, leaving a faint silver trail in its wake. "Thank you," I murmured into the night, not even sure who I was speaking to. The universe, maybe, or the forest itself, or simply the quiet part of my heart that had longed for this peace. My eyelids grew heavier, blinking slower. My body, so full of tension and movement during the day, now felt like it was made of something softer, heavier, almost liquid with relaxation. Every breath I took sank me deeper into the earth, grounding me, connecting me. Scout's breathing was a steady lullaby, in, out, in, out. I matched his rhythm, letting my thoughts drift like leaves on a stream. Tomorrow would bring new trails, new sights, perhaps even new adventures. But tonight, there was nothing I needed to do, nowhere I needed to be, except right here. In this tiny tent, in this hidden meadow, under a sky full of stars, with my best friend curled against my side. I shifted one last time, finding that perfect spot where everything just clicked into place. The sleeping bag hugged me close. Scout's warm body was a comforting weight against me. The cool night air brushed my face gently, like the touch of some invisible hand. I felt the last threads of wakefulness slip away, and just before sleep claimed me completely, I whispered into the darkness, a soothing reminder to myself. You are safe. You are warm. You are exactly where you need to be. And with that, I surrendered to the night, letting it carry me into dreams filled with starlight, pine trees, and the quiet, endless peace of a wild, beautiful world.